Hello everyone, it's Laura here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm gonna show you how to make a fun slider card. I actually made this card for the Snarktoberfest blog hop. As I am publishing this video, the blog hop is still running, so you can check out my blog post, which will be linked in the description box, to find out more about this snarky hop, get more inspiration and get the chance to win prizes offered by awesome sponsors. Anyway, to create my slider, I cut some Nina Desert Storm cardstock with a die by Studio Katia, and I also created an opening using a lawn fawn die. And I also cut some Nina Solar White cardstock with that same Studio Katia die that cuts out a rectangle which is exactly A2 size, so 4¼ by 5½. The part with the window will be the front of my slider. And the Nina Solar White cardstock will be where I will stamp and color the background for my slider. To complete the slider, I need to create the actual sliding element, and there are some dies available on the market, but I don't have them, so I designed my own. Basically, well, I am using my T-square ruler to draw the slider, the sliding part, so the sliding panel, on some Nina Desert Storm cardstock. And I will have an image on my blog with all the measurements, and it should help you recreate this slider card in case you wanted to. So what I want for my sliding panel is, of course, it has to be a bit wider than the front, the window in my front panel, because we don't want to see any gaps as the slider slides through. And for that reason, I'm marking the position of the window here on this piece of Nina Desert Storm cardstock. I am also marking the center of this panel because that's where I will stamp my sentiment. And then I need a pull tab, which I will draw in a little bit. And I need some sort of stopping mechanism so that when the recipient pulls the sliding part, it doesn't actually pull it out of the card, but it stops at the very end. For the pull tab, I am just drawing a rectangle that is sticking out of my slider element, and I am centering it around the center of the slider itself so that it's all nice and symmetrical. And at this point, my slider element measures 4¼ by 5½, but I quickly realized that that's not going to work because you need some room to put foam, as you will see later, so I'll keep it short now and I'll explain everything later, but basically you want your slider panel to be a little bit smaller than your card front because you want to have some room, as I said, to put a little bit of foam tape. So what I'm doing here is I am reducing the size to about 3¾ by 5. I'm sorry, I still have to get used to the US measurements units. Anyway, and here is where I'm drawing this these stoppers, sorry. So I basically have two little flaps that extend horizontally further than my slider elements, and this will help me construct or build the mechanism that will stop the slider from sliding all the way outside the card. And again, I am adjusting the sizes as I figure out how the whole thing is supposed to work, because this was the first time I actually tried to do something like this, but as I said, I will have a file uploaded on my blog with all the measurements, and it will be a little bit easier for you to do it than it was for me. Once I was done creating the outline for my sliding element, I went ahead and used my craft knife to cut everything out. I am also using a ruler to make sure that my cuts are straight, but also to measure things once again before I go ahead and cut everything, and then if I make a mistake I have to start again. So I'm using a cutting mat on the bottom so that I don't cut through my desk, but I had a little bit of collateral damage anyway, but yeah. That's just me always being too excited and too eager to get into things, but that's another story. And these little flaps that you can see here that I'm cutting right now, these are the stoppers. So I will place the foam so that this slider cannot slide through because of the presence of these flaps here. And because I wanted it to look a little bit more polished, I used the, the die cut that I obtained with my lawn fawn stitched journaling die to draw some rounded edges on my slider that I'm then cutting out with my scissors. And here is also when I realized that I had to trim off a little bit of the sides of these topping flaps because I needed room to place my foam tape. So that's what I'm doing right now. And really, this wasn't that complicated, and it won't be if you use the instructions I will have on my blog. It was just the first time for me, so I was just figuring things out as I went. I am now cutting some very thin strip out of 3M foam tape. This is already quite thin as it is. I think this might be like 1/4 of an inch, so I'm cutting it even thinner. And I'm running it along the sides and the bottom of the back side of my front panel. Obviously, I'm leaving the top free because otherwise, there would be nothing to slide. And in just a few seconds, you will see also how I will add a little bit of foam tape on the top to stop the slider from sliding through. There it is. I'm just adding these little thin strips, and I'm making sure that I position them so that I can slide the sliding part in a way that it will not be visible at all from the front window. So I hope it makes sense. Yeah, here I'm just being way too particular about it and covering every little dot. That was totally unnecessary, but I am that kind of person. What can I tell you? So now that everything is ready in terms of building the slider, I can go ahead and stamp my sentiment. I am using this sentiment that says, I would give up chocolate, but I'm no quitter. And this was an unmounted rubber stamp, and I don't have any mounting foam or anything. So what I did is I used my Tombow monomulti glue because when that dries, it dries repositionable. So I ran some glue on the back of this stamp. I waited for it to dry, and then I mounted it on the acrylic block. I was kind of nervous because you cannot really see through, but the stamping went fine. I used Memento dewdrops in rich cocoa. And yeah, like the glue left a little bit of residue on my acrylic block, but I'm sure I'll be able to wash it off. And this is the second part of the sentiment, which will go on the inside. So I marked the position of the window on this background panel, and I just printed the sentiment, or rather stamped the sentiment. And just for your knowledge, I wanted to let you know that the sentiment stamp, which is, by the way, by a stamp company that is called Gummiapan. I really hope I'm saying the name right. Anyway, all the supplies will be listed in my blog. Anyway, the stamp was one whole stamp, and I trimmed it down with my scissors because it was just more comfortable for me, because I wanted to split the sentiment anyway between the inside and the outside of my card. So that was just the most convenient thing to do. And this cake stamp over here is by Magnolia Stamps. And again, I hope I'm saying the name right. And I did some masking. So I created a mask by stamping the image on some repositionable packaging labels. And I cut out the outline with my EK Success Cutter B scissors. I then stamped the central cake on this panel of Nina Solar White cardstock. And I used the mask to cover the stamp image. And finally, I stamped the images on the left and on the right. And because the mask protects the front cake, basically any area of the side cakes that overlaps the central one will not be stamped on the final image, so on the final panel. And it will look like the side cakes stand on the bottom of the central one. I have a video on mask stamping on my channel already. It was actually my very first video. and I will link it here on screen and also down below in case you want to check it out and my explanation was not very clear. But yeah, apart from that, I am coloring my images with Spectrum Noir markers and I'm shading them as if my light source comes from the top right corner. I stamped them using Memento Dewdrops in Rich Cocoa because, I don't know, I thought it would be a bit softer and nice with the chocolate theme to have the images stamped in a brown chocolate ink rather than I guess I need to eat. It's lunchtime over here. But yeah, so I thought the brown ink would be nicer than the black one for this card over here. And while I'm coloring the images, and you can see all the markers I used here on screen, I want to take the chance to thank Josephine from Holy Leaves. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but anyway, I will link her website and her wonderful YouTube channel on my description box down below. But I really want to thank her and thank the sponsors for this blog hop and for inviting me to participate. I was really, really excited to be part of this, and yeah, so thanks a lot, really. Okay, back to the coloring. I used some bright pinks for the hearts and the flowers on the cakes, and finally some mint green for the leaves and the cake stands. And once all the images are colored, I can go ahead and assemble everything. So I'm making sure that things are centered enough, although it's not quite perfect, but it's okay as it is. I am removing the backing of my foam tape. I am inserting the slider panel and finally my background. And here it's how it looks when you open it. I think it's really, really fun. Again, don't forget to follow the link to my blog post in the video description down below and to hop along the Snarktoberfest blog hop for your chance to win great prizes and for lots of snarky inspiration. And that's it. That's my card for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and you found it useful. If so, please let me know in the comments below. Leave this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can visit my blog for the full list of supplies, and I hope I'll be back soon with another video. Ciao!